This is Akira, this is Megumi, and thank you very much for attending our online event. Appreciate it. So we're talking about udon, right? And then, well, we've been talking about udon, and then we talked about it before. But like today we're talking about like how to make like beginner's guide to authentic, how to make authentic udon noodles. And well, we're doing this because like we got asked well questions about like okay so I want to make udon, right? But then if I am making okay udon but like also like ramen noodles, okay, what kind of noodle, I mean what kind of machine is suitable for me, right? Or okay, I'm making authentic udon noodles but like I have no idea like how to make them. And then so could you explain? Then we have like some machine that are like designed for production udon noodles, and we have machine that's designed to do like mainly for mainly ramen, but like also be able to do some of the udon noodles. So you just wanted to kind of like do this class to well explain okay which machine would be like most suitable, and then why, and then like how you guys can make authentic udon noodles from scratch. So I just want to go over like just a few slides before we start making authentic udon noodles with on udon machine. So can we go through some slides, and then so for some of you like who don't know what authentic udon noodles is, like they look like this, and then so they are very thick and white, and then like some of them are actually well, the ones that are like really well made, trans kind of translucent, like kind of you can see through them, kind of. Um, so they're basically made of like wheat flour, water, and vinegar and salt. I'm gonna go through some ingredients later, but like basically, we're talking about the noodles, like noodle texture, and how we can make great udon noodles is that like we need to like think about first, like we need to decide on okay what kind of noodle texture we want, right? And then we what kind of noodle size we want for our udon noodles. And so when you take a udon noodle size, and we need to think about like cross section of well noodles, right? And so cross section noodle, and that the noodle size being like thickness and width, right? And then so because when we cook noodles, we have cooked noodles to eat it, but like when we cook noodles, that the like there are sides surfaces that are cut by knife, right? And then like there are surfaces that are like well thin by like roller. And what when we cook noodles, like the cooking water penetrate through the well sides, right? Side well the two sides, right? Two sides that are like cut surface, because these sides are like surfaces are cut right by the knife, and then so it's sharp, but like that's where the cooking water comes in, right? And then so when we cook noodles, the noodle strand gets pushed from the sides, and then comes after we cook it, like comes like kind of square shape like that, and then like with well four sides dented, right? So these dents, right, kind of help carry more soup, and then it produces this like wonderful noodle texture. So going over some of the ingredients, right? And then like we go through some like texture, like when I'm explain why how it makes the noodle texture, udon noodle texture great. And so of course like wheat flour. Wheat flour is like very important, and we also have like water and salt and vinegar. And I want to talk about like what kind of wheat flour is good, and then what kind of like water is better for good udon noodles, and salt and vinegar. And so noodle texture, like we've been kind of going over this like noodle texture chart many many times, and basically like protein content, the vertical axis, right? That's the protein content flour, wheat flour we use to make these noodles, and basically higher the protein content, the harder the noodle texture, and horizontal axis is like just represents the moisture content of the noodles, right? So like basically higher the high, well, this is a hydration level, and higher the hydration, the softer the noodle texture, lower and then harder the noodle texture. So kind of going deeper into high hydration noodles, which is like udon noodles are belong to, right? And then so the area that's like highlighted is where types of noodles that are like udon machine is like good at making, and it's very high in water content, and we're talking about like 45% to like 55%, right? And then so it tend to be like noodles like in this that belong to like this area, like it can tend to be like well thicker and softer because of the like hydration higher, so softer and thicker. And so we're talking about like the noodle size of like between like 2.4 to like 6.0 millimeter, like and like even larger, right? And yeah, and then like when talking about udon noodles, so we have to like, think about like in terms of like so this is we're talking about wheat flour, right? Of like protein content, and of course like another thing that we need to think about is like viscosity value. And viscosity value is like measures how elastic the noodle would be, like how stretchy and how elastic the noodle would become, like when we use like this particular type of flour with this viscosity value. And it says like Brabender unit, BU, right? And so this is the kind of machine that we use to measure this viscosity value. And um, we want to have, so like for example, like we want to have like noodle flour that's over 850 BU, and that's more elastic. And then so all these types of noodles, right? Regional authentic noodles, like belong to like this range of like viscosity value, and it's like Tokyo, Osaka udon noodles, like Kyushu udon noodles, Sanuki udon noodles. But what's different is that these are the like protein content level. So it's between like 7, 8, 9%, and so like basically it's got a 2% difference, but like that makes a huge difference like in terms of like noodle texture. So Kyushu udon noodles, even though like they are very thick, they're the softest of these regional udon noodles. So kind of going like talking more on like wheat flour, and so like there's a protein, right, and the starch moisture inside wheat flour for udon noodles. And like protein basically, that's hardness and the strength. And it's like kind of think of it as like kind of well the bars that are reinforcing bar inside like a concrete bar. And basically protein hardens when heated, and hardness noodle is determined like protein content. So the higher the protein, the harder the noodle texture. And the starch, right? Starch. So plays a role in forming sticky and viscous texture, right? And when adding water and heating it, it turns into like kind of glue-like and viscous texture. And so kind of like delicious, the kind of typical udon noodle texture comes from this like strong viscosity, right? And so like protein and starch, I'm not gonna go into like details of these like glutathione, like glutamine, and like all the protein. These are the types of like um, different ingredients that are like kind of making up these the protein and starch, amylopectin, amylose. But basically, so protein sort of like reinforces the integrity, like noodle strand until it gets boiled, right? Until it gets boiled. And then when it's boiled, like sort of starch, like amylopectin and amylose kind of take over the texture part of like, structure of like noodle strand, and like making it, um, yeah, glutinous, right? And so I'm not going to go into this detail, but like, so basically, when like amylose like we're talking about starch, right? And then amylose is usually like 20 to 30% starch, and then amylopectin is 70 to 80%. And a bigger ratio of amylose, makes noodle texture dry and crumbly. But like when there's more amylopectin, or less amylose, right, the texture becomes chewier and more viscous. So we want to look for flour with more that like the more of the amylopectin, right? So to measure it, like we use this kind of like device, right, measuring device to um, yeah, measure the viscosity. And so if you guys have like any flour that you want to test it, we can test your flour for this value, right? And the ingredients for udon, like so salt, we use a lot of salt for udon. And then what it does is that like um, more elastic, right? By tightening the gluten in the flour, and it also reduces the activity of enzyme, right, that contain the flour, and it inhibits the growth of unwanted bacteria, and then improves the flavor of noodles, and it adds, well, has salty flavor, like salty taste, but like most of them like is actually released like in cooking water, so it's not too salty when you eat them, and it prevents cracks in noodles when they are dry. So, and then we want to adjust the hydration and also the salinity level of the, because like we are resolving like all this salt in water before we add it to the flour, right? So we, depending on the temperature, if it's cold in winter or like hot in summer, you want to like control this like salinity level and hydration to have like sort of like consistent quality of udon dough, right? And we add vinegar, a little bit vinegar, and then why we add vinegar is that like also optimizes the resting process, and then it keeps stuff from spoiling, and then it controls pH level of cooking water, and it's kind of the same thing like when we're cooking ramen noodles, when we're cooking udon noodles, and when we so I've shown like this graph before, but like when we cook noodles, right? When we cook noodles, like the water that's neutral, then we lose a lot of noodles in cooking because they just melt right into cooking water, and then but when the water is like light acid, right? As like this graph shows, we lose 20% less noodles in cooking, and so that's the case like of the using the vinegar, right? Vinegar contains noodles like when noodles cooked, and then some vinegar gets dissolved in the water, making it light acid. And in case of like kansui, which is contained in like ramen noodles, like that's light alkaline, right? So it helps, yeah, with the yield of the cooked noodles. So that's what's happening. So it's when we cook noodles, yeah, it's like we are cooking udon noodles, and then what's happening is that like the noodles are releasing the salt and vinegar into the cooking water, and then then noodles are absorbing cooking water and then kind of exchanging them, right? But when we have like when we cook the noodles like in cooking water that's like hard, so hard means hard or soft, right? Hard means like we have a lot of these minerals like calcium, magnesium, right? So there's less room for this salt and vinegar to be released to. So like it takes longer time to cook, right? And so yeah, so that's why we should use soft water for cooking water. So that helps shorten the time of like cooking. So that's water, and then sorry, and then we are talking about like water hardness, or water hardness like affects cooking time. And so like we have this data of like different cities like water, right? And in New York 30 like it's soft, right? So like all these like soft water, and then kind of medium hard water, and like hard water, and then very hard water. And then you can check where like the water you guys use, right, in your city, and then like how hard it is, right? And then you see that affects the cooking time, and you may the water you may be using like maybe like affects the cooking step so bad that like well you may be like cooking your noodles like twice as longer or something, and then that would come down to the cost of the gas and like labor to cook the same amount of noodles, right? And then you're also losing noodles in cooking. So you should think about the use of the water softener. And then so I want to talk about the noodle making processes of the udon machine, right? And then I want to talk about the noodle making process of udon noodle making process, like for when we if you make udon noodles on ramen machine, right? So I want to just show you guys the difference, right? So it takes 2 days actually, and so the first day, like what we're doing is that like we're making dough, right? We are preparing dough, and so mixing, right? You want to mix like water, flour, salt, and vinegar, and then we're going to do the first resting process, like that's 2 hours, and then you're gonna press it, so walk the dough, and then we'll put the dough, the resting, and then overnight, like 24 hours. So next day, like we come and then like we start working on the dough, and we're gonna thin it and then cut it and then cook it and then portion it, um, right? And then so that's kind of like we portion the udon noodles after we cook them, right? So it takes 2 days to make and serve, right? And if we make udon noodles like on the ramen machine, like Richmond, so it just takes 1 day, and like mixing and resting and rough forming, like that's called like that's like sheeting, like making a sheet of dough from the crumbles dough, right? And then we combine them like so separate dough sheet into two, and then like combine them, and then sometimes second resting, we do second resting, and then the thinning and the sheeting, and then cutting and then portioning. So it just takes 1 day, and like different from like of the noodles made on udon machine. The ramen machine like just takes 1 day, but like the recipes be different, and then the size of noodles, size of udon noodles like we're making on the ramen machine may be different from the size of udon noodles we make on the udon machine. So um, because hydration ratio and those size, right, that are like that the standard ramen machine is good at making, and the standard udon machine is good at making are different, right? So um, yeah, so that's the threshold probably of the hydration ratio percentage would be like 45%. So like over 45%, we should like better do it on the udon machine, right? It's easier, and then like higher quality, right? And then, but under any like dough that's under like 45%, we want to do it on the ramen machine because of the rollout size, because of the way we process, like we prepare the dough. Okay, and yeah, so when we constructing noodle recipe, right? Like these are the things like we have to think about, like hydration, the protein and the hydration, and then the noodle size, and then whether noodles are going to be served like cold or hot. And so these are the pictures like of the dough, of like varying hydration look like. It's like 20, like the the four types on the left can be made on the ramen machine. The one on the right, right, like a chunks, like kind of clean, beautiful chunks of dough, can be made on the udon machine, right? And I just want to show you the just kind of rough forming by Richmond machines, kind of like this restoration, because like we are now going to show you the how udon noodles are made, on the ramen machine today. So we just crumble the dough, like, and then we're gonna turn them into the sheet of dough by force, right, through the roller. And so basically, like, higher the hydration, the lower the hydration, then the smaller chunks of dough, and higher the hydration, the bigger chunks of dough. It's like, so the higher the hydration, the dough, the more difficult it would be to do on a ramen machine. And so we're gonna go over this, like, an actual noodle making later, but like, so how dough is developed, right? And so like we work the dough like with this press machine, and we're basically like applying this pressure, right, um, on the dough, and then like we're gonna then like kind of like in the kind of entire area of dough. So that's how we prep the dough and then like work the dough to have like kind of gluten structure developed and like have like strong gluten inside the dough developed in there. So and so this slide kind of explains the kind of well when we get asked the question of like, okay, so in catalog, right, in brochure or like web page, like we say that like, oh, that's okay, this huge machine can make like 300 servings per hour, right? But like um, I want to explain that, right? Because it may be like confusing to some people because as I explained, right, udon making authentic udon noodles like takes 2 days, right? 2 days, like day one, like we're prepping the dough. That day one, like just spend on prepping the dough. So, and then day two, we are finally thinning it and cutting and portioning it. Um, so day one to day two, and then like so 300 servings per hour performance comes from this day two process, day two job, right? So that's the performance capacity of like thinning and cutting only. So the 300 servings per hour means that like the machine is able to thin and cut like dough that's equivalent to 300 servings, right, in an hour. So that's what it means. So I just wanted to like clarify that on this slide because we get asked this question a lot, many times. So okay, so yeah, and then making so if you're making, right, for example, going back to the first slide, and then so when you're making the so it's all about like noodle size, right? What's your noodle size? So maybe when you're making, okay, like thick noodles, like big size noodles, you're talking about like 5 millimeter by 3 millimeter, 5 millimeter width, 3 millimeter thickness. Then you should go with udon machine, right? But like if you're making like kind of smaller sized udon noodles, right? Um, let's say like that 3.2 by 2 millimeter, then you may want to, and then like if you're doing also like ramen noodles and other types of noodles, pasta or whatever, right? Then you may want to choose a ramen machine. So yeah, that's my answer. And then we also did video like class on the how we can make like very good udon noodles on the ramen machine before. So like if you're curious about like how udon noodles are made on the ramen machine, yeah, please check out the video. And if you're interested, like I can send you guys the link to it. So okay, so let's start making authentic udon noodles on our udon machine. Okay, so what we have here is that our udon machine, and it's called Shinichi, and it's a very high performance like machine. And then this machine has like the mixer unit of like 12.5 kilograms capacity. So That means that you can mix up like 12.5 kilograms of solid ingredients at a time, at maximum. Why 24.5, right? Is that like in Japan, right? One bag of wheat flour is 25 kilograms, right? And so this mixer can do half of that, right? A maximum. So you may be able to notice that like there are some small holes like in the lid of this mixer, right? And then so that's where the liquid drip through to the flour, and these holes help um, render like good hydration of dough. And so notice that like how much salt she's adding to the water, right? So it's a lot of salt actually. So like it's even like so it's so much that like it's kind of like difficult to melt it, right? So that's why she's like pouring the water into the bowl and then like melt it, like melt some of it and then like put it back into the water and kind of repeating it to like make sure that all the salt is like melted, right? And this is vinegar. Vinegar is like that small amount, like just 1% of the weight of flour, and salt, right? So we are making around like 12 to like 15% salty level of like water. So we're adding this liquid onto the mixer lid, and then the liquid is like kind of dripping through the holes, right, to the flour, right, the hydrating flour, and like we hate like waste your time, so like we maybe we prepare dough the day before. I mean, no, like 2 hours before. So this dough has gone through the first resting process, right? So that's 20 degrees Celsius for 2 hours. 20 degrees Celsius for 2 hours, right? And then what we're going to do, right, is to press it, and so we are pressing this dough in this press unit, and so in old days, right, udon shops used to do this pressing job, right, pressing process by actually stepping on the dough with their feet. Um, and it's actually very hard, like tough job to do because like you have to keep stepping on the dough like for 30 minutes an hour. It's almost like some kind of exercise, right? Um, but now like with this press unit, like you can just like you know put it in there and then like the machine does it the rest of the process for you. And so that's a first press, right? And then so she's folding the dough, like edge of dough, like inwards, right? And this is to apply the pressure, kind of equal amount of pressure, like on the whole area of the dough, so that we are working the entire area of the dough, right? Yeah, so this is a second press, second press. Like it's getting, though it's getting like kind of smoother surface, like in a chunk, like big chunk, and kind of clean dough. Yeah, so she's folding the dough to like kind of smaller dough, right? And then pressing it again the third time. Okay, so for the mixing part, right? So she just mixed it for like 4 minutes first with about like two-thirds of water, two-thirds water, and then she's going to add add the rest of the water and then like mix it for another 1 minute. And over here, like pressing it, right? This is gonna be fourth round of pressing, and so it's getting harder and harder, right? Because the dough is like kind of muscle, it's like it's almost like working a muscle, and then as you press it, it gets harder and bouncier. Okay, the mixing is done. So this is going to be the fifth, right? Okay, I think it's got enough workout for today. So she's dividing the dough into pieces that are small enough for her to be able to like sheet it, like thin it at a time. Because if she divides like into the chunk that's like too big for her to like be able to sheet like on this work table, then yeah, then that like the chunk of dough will be like too large, and you probably aim to have like maybe two to 2.5 to 3 kilograms like dough at a time to sheet, right? So this dough goes into second resting process, and then that's 18 degrees Celsius overnight, and overnight like 24 hours. So yeah, and you can see that like the cut like divided like surface like cut surface. It's like you see that the layers of the dough sheet like that dough that's like kind of pressed up like together, and then kind of forming the layers of the dough, and that's going to for like structure like really good like noodle texture. And we want to get rid of like as much air as possible like from this bag, right? So that the dough is, like keeps like its moisture. And yeah, she she didn't wanna wait to like wait for another 40 24 hours to see the next process. So she made this dough the day before. So we are going to, yeah, pretend that like, 24 hours already passed, right? And then like, you're going to thin this dough, right? You're going to like thin it, and like cut it to noodle strands, right? And but like they're just too thick, right? Well, to be like going through the roller. So we want to like flatten them first, so that they're gonna be like thin enough to go through the roller. So to do that, like we use this press machine to like flatten them. Yeah, and then notice that she put a lot of dusting flour, in between the like in these two pieces of dough, right? So that like when we apply like big pressure, like they didn't stick together to be like become like one piece of like dough, right? So just need to make sure that you dust them well before you press them. And so we're going to sheet it, right? So we're sheeting the dough, and what's important here is that like we want to thin it gradually. Like we don't wanna thin it like all at once, because that would like damage the gluten structure. We worked so hard to develop so far, right? And another thing like she's doing is that like she's inserting the dough to from like different directions every time. Like each time like she's inserting the dough into the roller, she's changing the direction of the dough that's going in, so that the dough is getting the sheeting across like pressure like in the different directions. So that it's kind of dough is getting like kind of warped, right, in different directions. So that's something that like we may not be able to do like on the ramen machine, because like ramen machine you're going to just sheet the dough like in on like just one direction only. So just getting thinner and thinner, right? And then um, so as I say, like thickness, noodle size thickness is important to get the great texture, right? To to get the thickness right, we wanna of course like measure it, right? We want to measure it, and then this machine, what this machine is great about it, like is that like the machine can like measure, can show the thickness of this dough like that's being like rolled, right? On this like display, like digital display, because like this sensor is measuring the dough's thickness, right? So you can just see how thick this dough is. Okay, so that's 6.1 millimeter and 6.1 millimeter, and then like, but that's folded, right? So like that's that like you have to like it's double the the thickness like one sheet, right? So the like thickness one sheet though be like you need to divide it by half, right? So that's 6.1 divided by half, like 3.05 millimeter, right? So that's a good thickness for the udon noodles, authentic udon noodles we are talking about, right? 3 millimeter, and then like so the width, right? Width, we should aim at like 4.8 to like 5 millimeter, right? So we're gonna cut it. So the machine cut the dough into the noodle strand, and then noodle strand like gonna drop onto this tray, right? That was moving, and so each noodle is kind of like lined up like nicely, and then all you have to do is that like just dust them well, and then just so like line them up, and then like kind of comb them through to straighten them up, right? And then yeah, store them away. And if you're gonna cook them like right away, then like you don't have to dust them with um, like starch. But like if you are but like if you're like store them away like and not gonna cook them like right away, then like you should dust them with the starch. Otherwise, like you can use the flour you use to make this dough, right? The same flour. Okay, so that's like how this authentic noodles is made on the udon machine. And again, like if you're interested in like if you're just like knowing like how udon noodles can be made on the ramen machine, please check out the other video in the class we done like in the past, right? So yeah, so this is a Shimuchi machine, and then again like 300, like up to like 300 servings per hour, like that performance like is based on the cutting, sheeting, and the cutting speed of this machine, right? And so if you make like this kind of size of noodles, right, and then you want to be making them on the noodle machine, but like if you're making like kind of thinner udon noodles, then you may want to be making, well, at the same time, like if you want to make like other types of noodles, right, then you want to be using ramen machine, right, to make them. So right, so this is huge noodle. So like depending on what kind of noodles you want to make, and then the your production needs, right? We always like ask some questions, and then kind of trying to figure out like what exactly you are trying to achieve, right? So because this is very important, right? Because this is a big investment, and you want to be precise in like okay, what you want to be doing, right, in this piece of equipment, so that you're going to achieve, or you want to reach your goal, right, for business. And you want to be able like serve a types of noodle you want to be serving to your customers, right? So um, that's why we want to ask you guys questions that help us understand what you are trying to do, right? So that's udon machine, and we have like many other types of machine, like soba machine, and then other types of machine, ramen machine as well. So it just depends on like your situation, like your goals, what you are trying to do. Then yeah, and then if you can answer questions like in more details, then that will help us understand your needs, so that we can suggest the best option that's suitable for your needs, right? So yeah, that's what this was about. And so we are going to be doing like many other classes, online events like this. So if you are interested in like certain things, like certain topics, we'd be really happy to hear from you. So please send any if you have like anything that you want to be interested in, like you're interested in like knowing, right? Need to I mean learn, and then please yeah, send them in comments, or like send us some emails. Really really appreciate it. So. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed already, like please subscribe to today, and then yeah, we hope to see you guys back in the next class. So thank you so much. Bye bye.